Bay Area commuters started paying more for BART on January 1st, and the numbers aren't small. A 6.2% fare increase is now in effect, which translates to roughly $150 to $600 added to your annual transit costs if you're a regular rider, and that's the third consecutive year of fare hikes for an agency that's basically staring into a financial abyss. The increase generates $15.6 million for BART. But here's the thing. The agency is facing a $376 million deficit by July 2026, and the service cuts they're talking about are so severe that 2 entire lines could be eliminated if voters don't approve a regional tax measure this November. The timing couldn't be worse for riders already dealing with a Bay Area cost squeeze. Bridge tolls went up, Muni raised fares, Caltrain raised fares, AC Transit raised fares, and all of this happened within months of each other, while San Francisco rents surged 12% year over year, and grocery costs climbed 5.7%. When BART surveyed riders about the fare increase, opponents outnumbered supporters 2-1, and the frustration in their comments tells you everything you need to know about how working-class riders are feeling right now. BART uses distance-based pricing, which means the fare increase hits you differently depending on how far you travel. The average fare jumped 30 cents, climbing from $4.88 to $5.18. But actual increases range anywhere from 15 cents for a short hop between stations to 55 cents if you're crossing the entire system. Downtown Berkeley to 19th Street, Oakland, went from $2.40 to $2.55, adding just 15 cents to your trip. Fruitvale to 24th Street Mission now costs $5.50 instead of $5.15. That's a 35-cent increase. El Cerrito Plaza to Civic Center in San Francisco rose by the same amount, going from $5.35 to $5.70. But here's where it gets expensive. Long-distance riders traveling from Antioch to Montgomery, that's a 45-mile journey, now pay around $8.95 instead of $8.40, an increase of 55 cents per trip. Airport surcharges got hit with the same 6.2% increase, and that means the SFO surcharge of $5.51 and the Oakland Airport surcharge of $7.47 both went up proportionally. The minimum fare now sits at approximately $2.40, while maximum fares can exceed $16 for the longest trips when you factor in those airport surcharges, making BART one of the most expensive transit systems in America for long-distance travel. 5 days a week, 50 weeks a year adds up to 500 round trips. And that's when these fare increases start to really hurt your wallet. Someone with a short commute, say Berkeley to Oakland, is looking at an extra $75 per year. The average commuter faces an additional $150 annually. Long-distance riders traveling from Antioch to San Francisco will pay $275 more this year than last. A commuter going from San Francisco to Walnut Creek who also pays for parking is facing $550 to $600 in additional costs when you combine the fare hike with parking rate increases. And that's the other part nobody talks about until they see their bill. Parking went up at 35 stations. High-demand stations like Glen Park, MacArthur, Rockridge, and Walnut Creek saw 30% increases on top of inflation adjustments, which is a fancy way of saying they got hit twice. Daily parking at Glen Park jumped from $4.90 to $6.50. That's $1.60 more every time you park there. MacArthur and Rockridge both went from $3.60 to $4.70, adding $1.10 per day. Walnut Creek increased 90 cents, going from $3 to $3.90, while most other stations rose 40 cents, moving from $3 to $3.40. Monthly reserved parking got even more expensive at 3 specific stations. Millbrae, San Bruno, and Walnut Creek all jumped $31.50, climbing from $105 to $136.50 for reserved monthly parking. And that's on top of the fare increases riders at those stations are already dealing with. There's one small piece of good news buried in here. 9 lower demand stations actually decreased their monthly parking rates by $11.20. But those savings are a drop in the bucket compared to what most commuters are paying. BART stands out among major American transit systems for 2 reasons. It's unusually expensive for distance-based travel, and it's one of the few systems that doesn't offer any kind of unlimited ride pass. The agency defends this as fair to short-distance riders. But the numbers tell a different story when you look at what other cities charge. The New York City subway charges a flat $3 per ride, no matter how far you go, and weekly fares cap at $35. LA Metro runs on a flat $1.75 fare with a daily cap of just $5, meaning unlimited rides for $5. Chicago's SATA charges $2.50 to $2.75 flat rate with an $85 monthly pass for 30 days of unlimited travel. DC Metro uses distance and time-based pricing like BART, with fares ranging from $2.25 to $6.75. But they cap it at $6.75 and offer monthly passes starting at $64. Boston's MBTA charges a flat $2.40 with a $90 monthly pass option. The difference becomes stark when you look at long trips. A 45-mile journey on BART costs roughly $10 to $12 after this increase. That same distance in New York costs you $3 flat. In Los Angeles, it's $1.75 no matter where you're going. Even DC Metro, with its distance-based system caps, fares at $6.75, nearly half what BART charges for long trips. Seattle made headlines in 2024 by switching away from distance-based pricing entirely, simplifying everything to a $3 flat fare, the exact opposite direction from where BART is headed. BART's cumulative fare increases over the past decade total somewhere between 50% and 65%. The average fare has climbed from approximately $3.50 to $4 in 2015, all the way up to $5.18 today. And that's not even accounting for parking increases or the various surcharges that keep getting added. Survey respondents opposing the fare increase outnumbered supporters 2-1, and their comments revealed genuine financial strain. Chastity Chamness, a BART rider, put it simply, "It makes me have to put money to the side or take it from other places like food or gas." Holiday Hashimoto connected the fare increases to service quality. "If you are going to raise the rates, get a better system going. We can't keep having all these breakdowns and you guys just keep raising the fares." Michaela McCrosty, a San Francisco resident, summed up the frustration a lot of riders feel. "Honestly, it's really not fun. And then to make it more expensive. No, it's not good." One anonymous survey respondent pointed out the basic math problem BART is creating. The more you increase the prices, the less likely people will want to even ride the BART, which will lower your revenue. Y'all are just making BART less and less accessible at this point. Not everyone opposes the increase, though. Some riders accept it as a necessary trade-off. "Look, no one wants to have to pay more for things, but I'd rather BART at double fares than cut service. BART is essential to my ability to live, work, and have fun in the Bay Area." That sentiment captures the impossible position riders find themselves in, choosing between paying more now or watching service disappear entirely later. A program exists that could cut your BART fare in half, and almost nobody knows about it. ClipperStart provides 50% off all BART fares for adults earning below 200% of the federal poverty level, which works out to roughly $52,400 for a family of 4. Only 47,000 people are currently enrolled, despite an estimated 1.6 million eligible adults living in the Bay Area. That's less than 3% utilization of a program that would cut a $5.18 fare down to $2.59. And the reason so few people use it comes down to awareness and enrollment barriers. Other discount programs exist as well. Youth Clipper gives riders ages 5 to 18 a 50% discount. Senior Clipper provides 62.5% off for anyone 65 and older. The RTC program offers the same 62.5% discount for people under 65 with qualifying disabilities. Children 4 and under ride completely free. There is even a high-value discount that gives you 6.25% off when you auto-load your Clipper card, meaning $45 buys you $48 worth of rides. Jamaica Sowell, director at Roots Community Health Center in East Oakland, explained the impact of getting people enrolled. When you have a Clipper card, your first thought isn't "I can't," but "what time can I get there?" Being able to tap into a discounted transportation platform like this is huge for our folks. The problem is reaching those eligible riders and getting them through the enrollment process, which BART acknowledges has been a massive failure. BART's fare hike landed in the middle of a coordinated wave of transit cost increases across the entire region. January 1st brought BART's 6.2% increase, Caltrain's elimination of the Clipper discount, which added 55 cents to the base fare, and a 50-cent increase on all state-owned bridge tolls, pushing the Bay Bridge to $8.50. These weren't accidental timing. They all hit on the same day. 6 months earlier, in July 2025, San Francisco Muni raised fares by 10 cents to $2.85, the second increase that year. Caltrain added 25 cents to their base fare. A Sea Transit increased fares by 25 to 50 cents depending on the route. Golden Gate Bridge tolls jumped 50 cents to $9.75, and Golden Gate Ferry added 25 cents per trip. The timing of all these increases amplified the impact on anyone who uses multiple transit systems or crosses bridges to get to work. The broader cost of living context makes everything worse. San Francisco rents surged 12% year over year, the sharpest increase in the region. Bay Area grocery prices climbed 5.7%, the highest since March 2023. Gas prices range from $4.39 to $5.22 per gallon, more than 50% above the national average. Bay Area inflation runs at 3.0%, higher than the national rate of 2.7%. For most Bay Area households, transportation ranks as the third biggest monthly expense, trailing only housing and food, and now all three are increasing simultaneously. BART Board President Mark Foley framed the increase in stark terms. As we ask the region for greater investments and support for BART while also making internal cuts to reduce costs, we also must ask our riders to contribute more towards their trips. The numbers behind BART's financial crisis explain why the agency feels backed into a corner. Pre-pandemic weekday ridership averaged 408,000 to 410,000 trips per day. Current ridership hovers around 165,000 to 200,000, roughly 45% of what it used to be, and that number hasn't been climbing back fast enough. Fares used to cover 70% of operating costs before the pandemic. Today, they cover about 25%, a structural collapse that no amount of efficiency measures can fix. Annual fare revenue dropped from $558 million down to $294 million, and the $2 billion in emergency federal and state aid that kept the system running is depleted by spring 2026. Starting in July 2026, BART faces annual shortfalls between $350 and $400 million, roughly 25% of its entire operating budget, with no emergency funding left to draw from. The agency projects $1.8 billion in cumulative deficits through 2030. BART General Manager Bob Powers admitted the obvious. "I can put a hiring freeze on today. I'm looking at overtime. But all of the levers I can pull are just around the perimeter of that deficit. Fundamentally, we've got to figure out how to invert our funding structure. If the November 2026 regional ballot measure fails, BART has outlined potential cuts that would transform the system into something unrecognizable. Train frequency drops from 10 to 15-minute waits to 30 to 60-minute headways, which means you're waiting an hour for a train during off-peak times. Weekly train dispatches get cut 83%, dropping from 4,200 trains per week to just 500. Peak Transbay service, the busiest corridor in the system, would drop from 15 trains per hour to just 4 trains per hour. Operating hours shrink dramatically, with the system closing at 9 p.m. instead of midnight. Weekend service could be eliminated entirely. No trains on Saturdays or Sundays. 10 stations would close permanently. 2 entire lines, the Red Line to Richmond and the Green Line to Berryessa, would be completely eliminated. Around 1,000 workers, 26% of BART's staff, would lose their jobs. State Senator Scott Weiner laid out the stakes. If we do nothing, we're going to see massive service cuts at BART, elimination of an entire line or two, closure of stations, scaling back or elimination of evening and weekend service. The math gets even worse when you realize that cutting 90% of service wouldn't even close the deficit. BART's own analysis shows such drastic cuts would only eliminate about half of that $379 million hole, because so many costs are fixed, regardless of how many trains run. Governor Newsom signed Senate Bill 63, the Connect Bay Area Act, in October 2025, authorizing a regional sales tax measure for the November 2026 ballot. The measure would levy a half-cent tax in 4 counties, plus a 1-cent tax in San Francisco, generating approximately $1 billion annually over 14 years. BART would receive roughly $330 million per year by 2031, nearly enough to cover its structural deficit.